Hello, everybody. I am Darren Starr, and for those of you who don't know, I am an astrologer, a fellow reader on astrology.com. I hope you guys enjoyed that creepy intro that I did. Don't want to scare you too bad, though. But in this video, I wanted to give you guys my personal analysis on the birth charts of serial killers. I thought about having my first individual video on celebrities, but I thought, you know what, I want to do something different. With Halloween season coming up, I thought I might do something a little bit more cryptic, I guess you could say. And so, depending on how long this video will last, I may do one analysis on one chart or maybe two if I have time because I don't want the video to be too long. And so, just to give a little quick lecture, I know some people have their little picks on what signs people like. Some people don't like certain signs based on their personal experiences, which I understand because I used to be one of them. But after studying astrology for so long that, I stopped doing that. I stopped having those prejudiced thoughts based on my personal experience with an individual, a friend, family member, enemy. So, one thing I've learned in astrology is that, you can't judge somebody based on one placement. And for those of you who are advanced in astrology, you know what I'm talking about. Somebody's moon sign is in a certain sign or a certain house, and you come across it a lot and you can't stand that person, or they irritate you, something about them that bothers you, or people who don't know nothing about astrology. All they know is their sun sign being their birthday. Somebody's born in July, like, oh, I can't stand Cancers. Somebody born in October, oh, I can't stand Libras. Based on this, their personal experiences with them. And I promise you, if you experience the same thing over and over again, I promise you, it is all coincidence. Everybody has a birth chart. Everybody's unique. Everybody is different. It wouldn't make sense, to have a billion people in the world and 12 zodiac signs and everybody be the same, or 1 out of 12 being the same. And if you're sitting somewhere talking about you hate Aries people, you hate Gemini people, you hate Scorpios, you hate a part of yourself because all 12 signs play a part in your personality. I promise you that. So when I get into my analysis on serial killers, if I mention a placement that they have, for those who are advanced in astrology, and I mention a conjunction that they have, if you happen to know somebody who has that same conjunction, don't jump to the conclusion that they're the same. Don't jump to the conclusion that, they're going to be killers too, off of one placement. Because these people, these souls who were incarnated into this earth, you know, in their charts, I've looked at so many of these people, they have very disturbing placements. And they have a lot of um, patterns that would indicate some unusual, strange behavior. So if I happen to mention a serial killer who happens to have Moon Aries, in a certain house, and you know somebody with that, don't freak out, because astrology is so specific with degrees and fixed stars and aspects and conjunction, and it makes them pretty much, so I wouldn't judge anybody basically. So some of the patterns that I notice with these serial killers, of course, all of their charts are completely different, but one of the things that I've noticed is that what makes them crazy basically is when there is um, a lot of malefic planets surrounding or aspecting the moon or Mercury. Now, those two planets are the most easily influenced planets in astrology. Mercury is, it can adjust to any other planet. Like it's easily influenced when it's being aspected by a certain planet. Mercury is ruled by dual signs, Virgo and Gemini. And, Mercury is a small planet, and so is the moon. And so the smaller the planet, the smaller the planet is, the more easily influenced it can be. So those two planets are very, very small. So the bigger the planet, the more influence it has. Of course, there's exceptions like Saturn. Saturn, puts boundaries and delays. And sometimes it can have more influence on a planet that's bigger than Saturn. that's one of the patterns that I've noticed. It always seems to be a Moon Mercury situation, um, or is being aspected by a malefic planet. Whether it's Saturn or Mars or some challenging aspect from Jupiter. Like if it's, even though Jupiter is a planet of luck and abundance and faith and all of that, but it could over exaggerate something. It can over exaggerate, whatever planet it touches if it's a challenging aspect, and that may not necessarily be a good thing. And Moon is very receptive. So this is why I think Moon is so delicate in astrology. Moon is very delicate. So when it's being aspected by a malefic planet, a person can be depressed or, you know, angry constantly. And Mercury and Moon, they both represent the mind. Moon being emotions and feelings, and Mercury is about logic and thinking and intelligence. And Mercury doesn't sound so bad, but people use intelligence for bad things. Like computer hackers, or they use their smarts for something evil, like stealing or getting away with something. Which is why I think Gemini, that sign in particular, kind of gets a bad rep because they can adapt to any situation. That's not the most emotional planet. It's just about facts, information, logic, reason. It can be good or bad depending on how Mercury is placed. Same thing with the moon. How is the mind being influenced? How are you receiving information? How are you taking things in? Because the moon representing your mind, it's a constant thing. We're constantly thinking. We can't escape our heads. So when we're born with a certain aspect, our mind becomes that planet pretty much. Somebody with a moon Mars conjunction, their mind is constantly on alert, always on the go, always ready, always ready to fight, or, or if moon is being challengingly aspected by Saturn, the mind can be depressed or feeling sorrowful, or moon Venus people, they're pleasant and nice, and they're very creative and artistic and all of that. But there's always this constant need for relationships, and niceness, almost to the point of disloyalty, because they're not receiving love, from someone. They'll easily move on to something else or someone else from somewhere else. And of course, there were other things that I've noticed, with degrees and all of that, for those who are pretty advanced in astrology, you would know about nakshatras in Vedic astrology, or fixed stars. You know, Fixed stars, when a planet's in a certain degree, these fixed stars do represent something. Some of them are demonic, and some of them are, angel-like, where a person can be spiritual. So this is why it's so specific, because sometimes, a certain planet at a certain degree won't do anything. Only certain planets at a certain degree, you know, can manifest those negative qualities. And these serial killers, they have they have very specific placements. And the first serial killer that I'm going to discuss is Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy was born November 24th, 1946 at 10:35 p.m. at Burlington, Vermont. Ted Bundy was one of the most notorious American serial killers. And I wanted to do his chart first because his was probably the most disturbing to me. He was more than a serial killer. He was a kidnapper, a burglar, necrophilia, a rapist. He did it all. You name it, he did it. He murdered a lot of young women in the 70s and possibly, I think, 80s, I believe. And, they can't even count how many people he murdered. And so I did a little research on him, on his biography, his roots, his parents. His parents. His mother has claimed that his father was some sailor, or something like that, which is crap to me. And it's been speculated that, that his real father was not a sailor. There's no record of a sailor that she met. And one of the things you can look at in a person's chart, to um, find ideas on what the father was like when you look at the sun position or the 10th house and the ruling planet of the sign that the sun is in. And so, if somebody were to have a sailor for a father, you would find patterns like, you know, an obvious one would be somebody being a Sun Pisces person, somebody born in March. Or if not Pisces, then the 10th house would be Pisces, or Sun in any sign with some Neptune aspect, or a Sun in the 12th house, anything like that, or Sun Cancer. But, you know, Ted Bundy is Sagittarius in the 5th house. And Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter, and Jupiter is in the sign of Scorpio, the sign of death and rebirth. And Scorpio is also a sign of secrets too, and it's in the 4th house. 4th house is family and mother, so secrets within the family. And so I did a little digging on trying to find out who Ted Bundy's father really was. And there is a rumor that his father was his grandfather, which is disturbing, and I believe it. I believe it based on the aspects that I see in his chart. And the story is that his father slash grandfather was also someone who was very abusive. He used to beat his wife. He pushed one of his daughters down the stairs, over something small and ridiculous. I don't even remember what it was, but he abused both of his daughters. One of those daughters being his mother, and he would have sex with them. He would take advantage of them. And one of those daughters got pregnant. And, this grandfather slash father he sounded very disturbed himself. I could not find his birth information, but there were stories where he would abuse his dog. He would grab stray cats and grab them by the tail and swing them around and throw them and screaming into thin air and screaming at nobody, basically, talking to himself. Very abusive. And another disturbing thing about Ted Bundy is the fact that he always said that he admired his grandfather, and everybody was scared of him, but not Ted Bundy. Even as a little boy, Ted Bundy admired this person. There was even a quote somewhere where he appreciated his father's teachings. Sun Sagittarius. Sagittarius is a sign of teaching, the guru, the preacher, the teacher. But teaching what though? So this is where astrology gets specific with signs. It's not just the sign, you got to look at the house, the ruling planet, which is Jupiter, Jupiter being Scorpio, manipulation, power, control, and, his Jupiter has bad aspects too. And it's also, the planet of religion, your faith and your belief. And, his grandfather slash father, whatever, was, extremely racist. He was a bigot. He hated other cultures, and he was very fixed. He had a very fixed opinion about his beliefs. So with Ted Bundy's chart, you can see that his Jupiter, the planet of faith and belief, is in Scorpio, a fixed sign. And Scorpio can be associated with feelings of hatred. And Jupiter has a challenging square aspect with Saturn, the planet of limitations and boundaries and strictness. So that is a bad aspect. So it's almost being dogmatic about what you believe in. And so Saturn is in Leo, a fixed sign. Jupiter is in Scorpio, a fixed sign. That's a negative aspect because Leo and Scorpio are disharmonious to each other. And Ted Bundy is a part of that Saturn Pluto conjunction. So with Pluto there, there's power and control behind it as well. And Pluto is making a challenging aspect to Venus, which represents women. It's making a challenging aspect to Mercury and Venus at the same time. So Jupiter, Mercury, and Venus are in Scorpio in the fourth house. So what that does, at least how I would interpret that, is somebody being manipulative in their communication style. And so he had the ability to approach women. Ted Bundy, he would approach women, and he knew what to say and how to say it, but he was manipulative, and dominant. Pluto can do that, and manipulative. Scorpio can be manipulative. So he has Venus and Mercury in Scorpio. You know, and so there's a gentleness behind the way that he spoke. I never watched any of his interviews. I don't know how he spoke, but if I didn't know him, I would think, okay, he knows how to talk to women. There's a pleasantness, there's a niceness, or at least as he would make it seem, to get what he wants, because he has challenging bad aspects from Saturn and Pluto. So with Saturn, there's carefulness, there's cautiousness, which sounds good, with Saturn approaching Mercury, you want to be careful, you watch what you say and how you say it. But with Pluto there, there's manipulation behind it. There's control behind it. There's always some hidden agenda, you know. There's always some kind of a stalkerish energy that goes behind it. It makes the mind, because Mercury is the mind, very perceptive. So he knew what woman wanted to hear. He had that perception of what women want to hear from a man. So we had that strong Mercury there. With Jupiter giving him knowledge, Jupiter is expansion and knowledge. So Jupiter, Mercury, and Venus, they're very expansive with the kind words. But it's in Scorpio, the sign of manipulation, having a challenging aspect from Pluto, which can make a person perceptive, manipulative, cunning, and watchful and perceptive and creepy-ish, watching from a distance, and it can even cause paranoia, so you're extra careful, with what you say and what other people say to you. And also with Saturn there, which represents limitations and boundaries, so he's extremely careful on what he said and how he said it to women to get what he wanted from them. But that's not the only thing that I found disturbing. That part was a little lightweight. But the most disturbing part to me was the fact that he had Sun, Mars, Moon, Ketu in conjunction in Sagittarius, opposing Rahu and the planet Uranus. Uranus is behind a rebellion and anything that is strange and unusual. And then it's with Rahu, which can kind of blow up, the energy of the planet that it's next to. It's an insatiable, obsessive energy. That's what the North Node will do, make it very obsessive and explosive. And Uranus and Rahu are very much alike anyway. It's bringing an extreme shock value and make a person extremely rebellious. And it's opposing the sun and the moon. So when it comes to the sun and the moon, when sun and moon are aspecting each other, you can almost find out or guess at least the dynamics of the parents. So, with these malefic planets, along with Sun and Moon, Mars being anger and aggression, and K2 bringing an explosive separation and isolation, and Uranus opposing it, bringing some unusual dynamic between the parents, or um, the type of relationship that was unstable and weird, basically. And so this is kind of why I believe that his grandfather was his father, because they said that he um, attacked his daughter and got her pregnant and ended up having Ted Bundy. That is a weird conjunction. I've never seen anything like that in my life. The whole temperament part, I believe, comes from his father. And so, Sun, K2, the South Node, and Mars are conjuncting the Moon, opposing Uranus. Um, I think that would just make the mind extremely explosive, and with Uranus opposing the Moon, there can be unpredictability when it comes to expressing his emotions. And with Rahu there, that brings, the North Node, Rahu, it's your karmic destiny. And K2 is all about your past life karmas, and you know, basically it means separation. So when people who have K2 and Moon together in general, the emotions are being suppressed. They don't deal with their feelings or emotions, So people who have this, can come off cold hearted. And then with Mars there, not only is he cold hearted, but he is mean and aggressive. And with Uranus opposing it, there is this, that's the polarity there. Uranus being in Gemini and the Moon being in Sagittarius. So the emotional needs, because Moon is all about reception. Remember that. So with Moon, Mars, K2 together, there can be a craving for sexual desires, because Mars is a masculine planet. It's a planet of sexual needs. And so it's like a constant um, circle that's going on inside of his mind, where he craves sexual needs, but then there's an obsession to be independent, because Rahu is in conjunction with Uranus, and Uranus is a kind of independence, rebellion, and freedom. So there is an obsessive need to have independence and freedom and detachment, but it's also, I have emotional needs at the same time. And so he has emotional, sexual needs from a woman, because the four planets are in the fifth house, the fifth house being romance. So there is a need, because the moon is always your emotional needs. So there is a need to have romance, love, and sex, because fifth house is sex too, and romance, and Mars just makes it even more sexual. And that is the mental struggle. Like, I need, sex and romance, but at the same time, I want detachment, and I want to be able to do what I want to do. I want to be able to express my weirdness, basically. So, and I think that pretty much added up to him being necrophilia, because he liked to have sex with dead women, pretty much. It kind of balances those needs out. He's pretty much getting what he wants. I can get the sexual needs, the pleasure that I'm getting, the romance, the love, and sex, but also I'm not being smothered by a woman's emotions, because K2 is detachment, separation. So with K2 Moon being the fifth house, it's like uh, getting away from the emotional needs of my romantic encounters, because I'm obsessed with, my freedom and independence. And so that is why I think, he's so odd, in his thinking and his mind. And with sun there and the moon there, that brings an unusual dynamic between the mother and father. You know, his mother, you know, getting pregnant by her own father. That's weird. That's just weird, and it's very, very disturbing, even without astrology, that just, it makes a lot of sense that Ted Bundy turned out the way that he did, because you're basically getting three-fourths of genetics from the father slash grandfather, and so the majority of his personality would be coming from him. It's like semi having sex with yourself, if that makes sense. I know it sounds weird, but that's what happened. So the majority of his personality is like his grandfather, somebody who was abusive, bigot, crazy, screaming at people, screaming to no one, you know, and just sexually crazed. And so it makes a lot of sense. They say it's a rumor, but I think that's a fact. I do believe that his grandfather is his father. And another odd thing is that Ted Bundy was very upset with his mother for not telling him the truth about his father. You know, what truth would he be upset about, right? He also grew up thinking that his mother and his aunt were his sisters. So when you look at his third house represents siblings. And he has Neptune there. Neptune represents lies and deceptions and confusion, illusions and, mysticism and all that, or something that is like a fog, something that is unclear. So you know, he had step siblings when his mother married somebody else, but by blood, he really didn't have any siblings. He had an aunt and a mother, and he grew up thinking those were his sisters. you know well, in a way they are. In a way they are his sisters because his father's his grandfather. It's so confusing, which makes a lot of sense with Neptune being in the third. And third house is siblings, but 11th house is also siblings. And then you have Rahu and Uranus there, which is also something that is weird and unusual and unorthodox. So all of that stuff makes a lot of sense. And even when Ted Bundy was a young boy, I believe 3 years old, he placed knives on the bed of his aunt while his aunt was sleeping, aunt or sister, whatever you want to say. When she was sleeping, he placed knives all around her, and when she woke up, he started smiling at her in that very devilish, creepy smile. So you can tell that there was something evil and dark, even at that time at such a young age. How would he learn something like that so early on, with no television or no advanced technology where he would pick up on anything like that? So it was pretty much ingrained in his soul from the beginning. So this is why, I'm always preaching about, sometimes it's not so much about the signs, it is about the planetary aspects and conjunctions and the planetary configurations that, pretty much make you who you are. The zodiac signs is just the way you do it, the style of doing, displaying the actions. Like, with four of those planets, Sun, K2, Mars, and Moon, being in Sagittarius, Sagittarius is a sign of long distance traveling in the fifth house of romance. So that conjunction in itself is already, extremely malefic and disturbing and unusual and weird. And so, with it being in the fifth house, that those actions, because the planets do represent our actions, are being displayed in his romantic dating life. You know, and Sagittarius, the sign of long distance traveling, he traveled all over the United States, raping and killing and abusing women all over the place. And he also was a burglar, so he was invasive in people's homes. That scorpionic energy being in the fourth house. Scorpio is about penetration and looking deep within. And so he had no boundaries when it came to stuff like that. Being invasive when it comes to people's the privacy of their home. And I'm not saying anybody who has Scorpio in the fourth house that you're invasive, but for Ted Bundy, the planets that are there with bad aspects, he just he just acted that way. He had the intelligence to break in, which is Mercury. Venus representing women. And then Jupiter. With the rulerships being ruled by the eighth house and the fifth house, which is intimacy and sex. So just having a lot of knowledge when it came to taboo subjects. Scorpio is a sign of secrets and taboo and mysticism. And he was also born on a fixed star. He was actually born on quite a few of them. So I had to get my journal for this one and write this down because I thought this was really disturbing. His moon being in Sagittarius is at a certain degree. It's at a fixed star called Sabik. And when moon is at that fixed star, it can make a person anxious, morally perverted, and gain success in evil deeds and have mental depravity. And then there's another one. He has Mars at another fixed star called Alwade. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Which gave him the ability to inflict pain, long lasting pain, on others with sharp objects. And then there's another one. Oh, wait, I left out one part. Alwade. It also brings enjoyment with severing body parts, which is what he did. Torturing animals, which is what his father did, because the sun is in conjunction with K2 and Mars. So, like I said, the dynamics of the father with the son. And being at that fixed star, enjoyment with torturing animals and body parts. And the last thing, well, not the last, it's like four more. He has Uranus at the fixed star called Bellatrix in Gemini, which brings mental disturbance and someone who displays unusual practices. And then his ascendant is Leo at the 25th degree, called Alfred. And one who has the rising degree can bring addiction to women. Obviously, he was addicted to women. And then his Neptune is in conjunction with a fixed star called Parima, which can make a person very cunning, evil, and bring mental imbalance. And then the last one, his Saturn is at another fixed star called Acelus. I don't know how to pronounce these names, but basically it makes a person untrustworthy, someone who develops bad habits, and in early childhood they develop bad morals. Yikes. So as you can see, he was born on, multiple fixed stars, that brought up, you know, evil traits. And so this is why, you can't judge, zodiac signs so much, because the zodiac signs is really just, the way you do things, the style of doing things. And for those of you who are advanced in astrology, I'm assuming you already know that there's way more to astrology than just having one planet in one zodiac signs. And for those who are, pure beginners, and all is birthdays and somebody born in August, Leo, and you like or dislike Leos, and May, Taurus, and you have a certain feeling about them, um, I want to be that person to let is to let go of those habits and not to judge anybody or have prejudiced thinking based on your personal experiences. because everybody is different. Everybody's unique. And, once I'm done with these serial killer horoscope readings, I want to do more videos on, basic astrology. And so that's what I plan to do. But, anyways, if you guys liked this video, then please comment below. Let me know what you think. And I do want to make another one. So I kind of want to go by what you guys think. If there's another serial killer that you would like me, to cover, please comment below, and I will take a look at what you guys say, and I will, based on the names that I see, then I'll make a video based on, what you guys think. But anyways, this is the end of my video, and you guys have a creepy night.